When you're in a selling engagement with a prospect or a client, it's easy to get off track. The prospect starts asking you questions and starting to take control of the meeting, and or they go off onto a tangent. Your goal is to be the driver. You're steering this car, right? Don't let them grab the wheel. So you have to be in control of the sales meeting at all times. It's easy to slip back into some old habits, start talking about your company or your tools or your people too much too soon early in the meeting. You want to make sure you practice this on your own beforehand. The way to fix anything and get better at qualifying the things we've been talking about, result selling framework, is to role play, practice. Don't practice in front of the prospect or the client, right? You've got this piece of gold that's a lead, and you're going to go out there and give it the old college try in front of a prospect? No, that's not going to lead to success. The goal is to prep prior, be prepared. What questions am I going to ask? What things am I going to uncover that are urgent, as well as latent problems that they possibly could be having? What questions I ask will determine the value of your IT, the value and the quality of that engagement with that prospect. Instead of telling or instead of selling, we should be asking questions. That is what we've learned in result selling framework and along this ride during this segment in Sales Pitch Podcast. Ask questions and differentiate ourselves from our competition. All right, Sales Pitch Podcast. Welcome back, James LaVine. James, how you doing?
Hey, Keith. Doing great. Thanks for having me back again.
Great to see you. Great to have you back.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey since we started this whole result selling framework. Yeah, and it's been fun. It's been absolutely a ride, to say the least. What do you think?
That's true. I mean, as of this recording, we're about a year in the making, right? So,
Yeah,
a
I remember
lot
back.
of time, effort, and
Yeah,
sweat.
remember back in the early days when we were just trying to figure this out, and we took a basic idea framework, and we really sat ourselves in the shoes of our partners. And you and I both were on the selling side when we were in our MSPs, and just really working through all of the challenges and all of the frustrations and how come our MSPs are really struggling with selling. And I remember all the long talks and discussions and just working through all this stuff and to this final piece that we created. So it's been really a serious journey.
Yeah, and for our listeners out there, you may not know this, but we brought partners in, MSP partners of PAX 8s to get a lot of the things that we did for result selling framework. We wanted sales to be geared toward the IT service provider. So it's built by IT service providers for IT service providers. So I think that's probably the coolest thing about this. Because you and I, like you said, you and I know enough about sales. We've been doing it for decades. So how's it apply to these providers, right? We've done it. We've lived it. We can take stuff out of our brain, but boy, it was cool to get the feedback from the partners that are out there.
It's really interesting now you're saying that is, like you said, you and I have been doing this for a long, long time, decades. It's almost embarrassing to say sometimes to say that word out loud. But when we were in the room with those partners, I was actually listening for what are some of the newer challenges. And sure enough, it was the same old, round and round. Not asking questions, not listening, not going deep enough, not really even understanding who they're talking to. And not just the ITSP side, but also for people trying to sell security as well. And I found that fascinating. So I love how we just built this out. And we really created something unique and different in the marketplace, a framework that guarantees results.
That's why the name results is in there. So, hey, so for our listeners that may not have caught our past episodes, well, one, go back and listen to them, please. Lots of great value. But James, go ahead and give a real quick intro around yourself and your experience.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm a senior executive coach at PAX 8 Academy. However, prior to all of that, I actually owned 8 different businesses, from startups up to multi-million dollar. And my last business was my IT company, which later became a managed services company. I had that for 25 years before I exited a couple of years ago. And in parallel with that, I actually had a marketing company for 12 years. So between the marketing and doing my owner-led sales and growing out my own MSP, yeah, I would say I have a well-rounded experience of 1,000 ways how not to do something, and also to bring experience on the selling and the marketing side of the house. So
Excellent. Wealth of knowledge for sure. So, like James said, we had a lot of fun in creating the course in Pax8 Academy around result selling framework, and really just having a little fun with it. So we did a really sarcastic take on a first time meeting with my alter ego Keith Spicoli. So if you haven't seen that, pretty fun. It's definitely a tip of the cap to the Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Um, James, you also sat down when we were recording the on-demand course as a disgruntled prospect too. That was pretty. That was pretty funny itself.
it was funny, but it wasn't funny, right? Because I've been on the other side of that coin. And so that's where, when I was doing that as a disgruntled owner, it's because of lots of years of experience. I know exactly what they were saying. I've been in that position myself. I remember being across the table from people in that very position. And so it just came naturally. So unfortunately, when you watch that, whoever's listening gets a chance to watch those particular videos that we did around that, you're going to hear me coming from a business owner, a typical business owner, being disgruntled and upset about the fact that you're talking about your tools, or you're trying to sell them how good your service are, how fast you answer your phones, and you're not really listening to them as a business owner. And I know as a former business owner, it's frustrating, very frustrating when somebody doesn't take the time to get to know me and my business. Why did I start this business? What are we trying to do? Who do we sell to? What is the impact we're making on the world around us? It was frustrating to be sold to, which I hated. And there was times where it basically hosted people right out of my office because you were wasting my time. And, that's where that came from. So, yeah, we had some fun making that. You're Keith Spicoli. I got to tell you, you nailed that. You were meant to be in Hollywood. You'd be the perfect ITSP Hollywood version. They should do a remake and have you cast as that. So,
Unfortunately, I got the face for radio, right? So.
Or at least podcast. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, so let's pivot on that. So go into what you're kind of saying about the frustrated owner, right? So go into what IT services companies do normally and the mistakes that they make.
Yeah, and we know this is typical. I know if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have done it yourself, or you know of other peers and colleagues who have done this. And we go in and we tout, hey, this is great. I got this opportunity. Let me tell you how great we are in business. And let me tell you about our latest services and our latest tools. We have the fastest response times, and we can do all these great things for you. And the key issue is you never really ask them anything. Maybe that's not what they really are looking for. We didn't even get into who am I, from a business owner aspect. You're not asking them specifically, what are your current challenges? Why are we even talking today? And you just jump right into, oh, I got an opportunity. Let's jump on this. And kind of reminds me of that scene from Tommy Boy. You and I laugh about this all the time, where you get that little Jojo, the Indian boy, with the little, I got this fresh sail, and you rip it and tear it apart, and it's like, and you just lost the sail. It's just like that. Get overly excited because it's like, wow, we got this opportunity. I'm going to get you a quick proposal out as fast as possible. And we totally missed the mark.
So the results selling framework discovery guide. We coach partners that this is not a script. It's not designed for you to write down your questions. Why is that? Why do we tell them, hey, this isn't a script?
Well, that one's pretty easy. I could go into a couple analogies, but I'm just going to say straight out that one size does not fit all. And when you sit there and you start to try and memorize a certain script or something you think is the right thing to say, and you didn't take the time to understand that this is an individual business and they have their own unique needs and their own challenges, then it makes you actually look very unprofessional, and also makes you feel like a spammy salesman that's not listening. And that is a huge, huge issue that we have in our industry, right? I think you've got some special terms for it, which I always find funny, about the seller listening dysfunction and some other things, but it's true. And the reason we use the discovery guide is it creates this framework. So it's like guardrails. You learn to ask questions within a certain framework to keep you in alignment. However, it's going to be unique and special to each individual case. So that's one of the reasons why we do that.
Yeah, I like that term guardrails. I'm gonna borrow that one. That's exactly what it is, right? Don't want to fall off the road. Bumpers in bowling, right? They put the
Yeah,
bumpers up for the kids, right?
that's
Yeah, stay in
right.
the line.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
uh, James, you were spot on with that. Fantastic. So yeah, we want to build relationships here. We want to be known as a subject matter expert and get to the root of the operations of their business, right? So, if this isn't a script, how should a partner prep for a meeting? What questions should they be crafting and thinking about?
Well, normally, whenever you get an opportunity, right, say whatever lead source doesn't really matter, do your basic research. You got to research the company. There's so much data. We are in a data-driven world. It's everywhere. It's prevalent in our society. You can pretty much find out anything on anybody if you just put a little effort into it. When you're in the sales role, it's critical that you're researching the company, you're researching the person you're going to be talking to, or multiple people, and get an idea of who is this person, what are they about, what industry are they in, who do they sell to, what is their product line, just get a really good basis. That will start to formulate the kind of questions that, at least for the introductory, the rapport building side, and then from there, you're going to start driving even deeper. What I find fascinating is when you find out that this is an industry that you have expertise in. Oh, it's like all the light bulbs just go off in your mind. Everything lines up, all the stars align. Everything is perfect for you because now you are an expert, and you're going to be able to ask questions that they may not have even thought of yet. And that is where your genius and your experience and your authority really kicks in.
Yeah, the buyer's favorite subject is not you. It's them. So ask questions about them personally, about their company. Get to know them, humanize this thing. I think you mentioned that. You and I have talked about that. You said it, humanize it. I love that saying. So the buyer, here's where we get into it. The buyer may be challenged to answer questions around like future state, where they want things to be, or metrics. Because I would say first and foremost, like we talked about in the one segment, we have different buyers. A technical buyer may not be have their finger on the pulse of like a economic buyer. So, and they may not, let's say for example, an office manager, for example, that's real world. They are a technical buyer. They may not be the one that signs off on opportunities, but they have a major role, right? They got the fingers on the pulse of productivity and efficiency issues within the operation, right? So when we start asking questions around what do they want things to be, or specifically metrics, finding out like, hey, how are they going to measure us if they choose us as their IT company, right? They may not do that because typically, well, one, IT companies do not typically don't ask questions around that, like, hey, how are you going to judge us? So how can we help, I guess, guide the buyer with this, and definitely the listeners we have around this, and why is it important to ask questions about the future and metrics and decision criteria and all that good stuff?
That's a great question. So when you think about one, use the discovery guide, right? Like we said, guardrails, this framework that if you've gone through all the other lessons and podcasts, you've really learned this, you're going to understand that the reason you're talking is probably not the true reason why you need to actually be there. It's usually a symptom, some type of challenge that came to the surface. Hey, we need to call up an ITSP. We need to call somebody, some tech provider to help solve some particular issue. However, as you're asking questions, you've done your due diligence, you've done your research, you realize what kind of business this is. Then we go into the deeper level. I like to say, before I go too much further than that, think of a doctor, right? you've got this cold or a runny nose or something's off. You go see the doctor. They're not going to just instantly prescribe you something. They're going to take you through a list of questions. They have to do a process of elimination. They got to ask questions. They got to narrow down what is actually going on before they can give you a prescription. Almost identical in our industry. We have to do the same exact thing where we're asking questions about, you're saying you're having these things. What else is happening here? Tell me more about that. Describe to me this situation. Show me this. And you're diving deep into the current situation. This we call it a current state in our discovery guide, but what's really going on in their business? And what are the implications? What are the ramifications? Why is this impacting you so greatly? And let's talk about that and bring it to the surface. Tell me more. Describe to me what you mean by when you say when all their computers are offline and everybody's sitting around that people are disgruntled, we're losing money by the hour. What does that actually mean? And you get deeper into this. Then eventually, after we've fully went through everything possible in their current state and the impact and implications and the results of that's affecting them, then we go into, okay, well, what would be that ideal, that future state, that ideal, that perfect picture of a business that you would really love to have? That one where if everything was working perfectly, what would it really look like? And how would we define that? Give me the idea of how would you know that you finally reached nirvana? You've reached that perfect state in your business. What would that look like? Give me some ideas. And you mentioned, Keith, metrics and numbers. Same thing. It could be metrics. It could be something that is a current challenge to them that they would someday wish they could get rid of. Guess what? You might be that person that can do that. Then we go even deeper as we go into, like you teach in your course, and the Results Selling Framework course. Tell me more about that. Explain to me. Demonstrate. Describe to me and show me more about this. You keep going deeper and deeper, at least 3 levels deep. Never settle for the first answer. Keep going deeper. As each layer gets unveiled, then we're going to start to really get a clear picture of what it is they're really seeking. Then, how are they going to define what success looks like? How are we going to be judged on what kind of job it's going to be? But we need to know that. Can we guide that talk a little bit since we're experts in that particular industry, or experts in that solution, or experts in the future state of this business because we've done it before? We can prove it telling our stories, right? Another thing we teach about. Then now we're setting ourselves up for this wonderful proposal because we've clearly defined what they're going through, why we're talking, the impact. We're talking about where we're trying to take them, what it's going to look like, and the benefits and the impact of that wonderful future state we're getting them to. How can we bridge the gap between where they're currently at to that future state? Are we the solution that's that bridge that's going to get them there? I like to say from our current state island and this bridge over to the future state island, that nirvana, perfection. How do we get them there? Are we the solution? And of course we are, because we're experts in that and we've got proof by telling our stories around that. We use the Discovery Guide as the framework to put all those pieces in place so it keeps, like I said before, on guardrails. So as we're getting ready for proposal, and we're putting all these pieces together, we've clearly defined all these elements. We know what they're looking for, what's bothering them, the impact of it all, and then we can address that and come up with the perfect solution that they're truly seeking, not just a quick Band-Aid for the reason they called us.
Oh my goodness, that's a wealth of info right there. We started this conversation with like not making this a script, not taking the discovery guide. Like, look, I'm not opposed to you taking a series of questions that you want to get answered, especially if you prepared uniquely for this prospect. But we're having a conversation, is what you were saying, right? So if you have a script in front of you or a bunch of questions in front of you, human nature is, hey, we look down and we look at what's the next question. I want to sit there and ask a question and then listen because of what you said. What was their response to that answer? And then I want to have a follow-up question to that, and a follow-up question that you don't know what answer they're going to give you to be able to do that piece. So I love that. Just that part of it is continuing to ask questions to go deeper, and then getting to the point and asking like, hey, what are these outcomes, right? How are we taking you to the promised land? How are you going to measure us?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. There's a couple points. One, you've got to be curious. You have to be a naturally curious person. Do not settle for the surface answer. Be curious. Dive deeper. This is a human being, right? Everybody has a uniqueness about them. And so we all have a story. We have reasons why we do what we do. When you're talking to people, remember, you're not trying to sell something. You're getting into their world. How can you make their world better? How can you add value to their world? How can you enhance their world, right? And be curious around that. The other one is, and I love this when you said, it makes me laugh because I keep thinking about, I know you're Mr. Baseball, and I kept thinking, what if I never played baseball and I quickly whipped out a manual and I'm up to bat and okay, it says, hold the bat this way. Okay, hold on. Okay, here's this ball coming at me. Okay, I'm supposed to swing. Wait a minute, I got hips. And you're trying to do this on the fly like a script? That's totally ridiculous, right? Well, we don't do that in sales either. So going back to what you said, the guide is not a script. We practice way before we role play all these other things. And so when it's time for us to step up to bat, we've done it. You think about a professional. Every professional practices. I don't care what industry you're in. It doesn't matter. Professionals practice, amateurs wing it. And we're just not amateurs. This is be professional in your sales. Be professional in representing your company. Be professional in actually caring about the other person that you're engaging, right? Because people can tell when you're trying to sell them versus you genuinely care about them. And part of the result selling framework is we ask these questions because we care and we're looking to go deeper and deeper to really try and figure out and solve the true issues and challenges that they're facing.
Boom. That was a mic drop moment, James. We care. I mean, I had this conversation with a partner. I haven't met anybody in the IT services world that didn't care, that didn't want to solve the problem of our clients. So that's what this is all about. Love it. I like what you said too, is like, practice beforehand, prep beforehand, role play beforehand. Sales is a skill. It's not an activity. So for an owner out there that's, responsible for running with the ball and growing the business, right? You're not selling here. You're basically, this is something that you haven't done. So let's practice, spouse, sibling, whoever. Let's just, hey, what do you think? Right? Here's some things I want to have questions. Ad lib, throw stuff back at me. Yeah. You mentioned, what professionals do. Like anybody that ever played a sport, you've got to, practice to be better, to get to that next level.
You remember Tiger Woods? We all know who he is. But do you remember one time when he was at the top of his game, he actually went back to the drawing board because he felt like his swing was off by like 1 or 2%. And he literally went back to the basics and practiced day and night on his swing. And he was already at the top of his game. That tells me right there that there's always room for practice, always room for improvement, always be professional, right? That's what the pros do. And if you're listening to this and you don't do these kind of things, role play, you're practicing way before you're up at bat, then you need to rethink your profession, and two, am I a true professional? If you take this seriously, then know that you're going to be practicing. There's just no getting around it.
So we're going through, right? We're talking to the prospect, and we've had this great dialogue with them, asked a bunch of questions, and we're at the point where we're pretty much we've pretty much asked every question. We're at the point where it's like, hey, these folks will be a good fit for us. Good TCP fit. They value IT. I know that because of the response of the questions to the questions I asked. Right? We've gone through finding out the problems, the impact those problems, ramification if they don't do anything, the future. What we talked about here a little bit, which is decision criteria, metrics, right? We're tapped out of the question standpoint. So what's a good way to transition the conversation after you're done asking questions, right? Most of this time, by the way, prospect hasn't, they might not have asked a lot of questions of us yet. So what's a good transition from your experience?
Usually it's, so do you have any questions for me? That simple. I keep it down and dirty, right to the point, because at this point, it should have been all about them. If you've been just spouting all about you, then you missed what RSF is all about. Just, oh, do you have any questions for me? And what else? What other questions do you have? And you make sure that you exhaust any questions they may have, because at this point, you've already taken them down this journey. You've asked tons of questions, and through your questioning, you've already shown your expertise. You show you know what you're talking about. You've shown that you care, and you're adding value just by asking questions, which seems odd, but you're helping them uncover and unveil issues that they may have had realized were even a challenge for them in their business. And so you're already adding value around that. But yeah, it just comes down to something as simple as, so what kind of questions do you have for me? Really? And anything else? Great. And then from there, then we can go into the articulating value conversation and get specific into some of the stories. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about us, and here's how we are different from our competition, and here's how we've done these particular solutions that you're seeking, and how we've done it better than everyone else. However, before we even talk about that, any other questions? One more time, then we continue on.
Right. Good point. I used to do this one habit that I made sure I kind of did, because the prospect is going to ask you like questions about you during your conversation. And I used to reply as like, that's a great question. We're going to get to that. I've got a few more things that I want to kind of learn more about you first before we get there. Is it okay if we come back to it? And at least get that, so that way you're not tempted to jump into it. And I would literally sit there and write it down, so that way I didn't forget it and I did come back to it. Hey, by the way, you asked this question earlier. Let me circle back to you now and answer that piece, right? Because we don't want to discount what they're asking, but yeah, we want to sit there and question and listen. This is about them, and realistically, if you're an IT service provider out there, you should be asking questions. Hey, is this client value IT? Are they a good fit for us? You should be looking to qualify them, and if they're doing things that don't fit your business, right, it might be a disqualifier. So,
one way I address that, I have a little different. I love how we have differences in our things, and for me, in the beginning of the conversation, if they quickly want to dive into who we are, I'm like, oh, that's, yeah, we could get into that. In fact, let me give you a quick 10 seconds. Yeah, we've been in business X amount of years. We specialize in X, Y, and Z. However, let's talk more about you. And I quickly flip it back on them and get back into the conversation. So like you said, I don't dismiss it. I quickly address it, but it is not about us. I will spend 80% or 90%. I want to make it about them 100%, because I'm here like a doctor. I'm going down the list. And I'm trying to figure out what in the world is happening, asking questions after questions after questions, so I can get a really good, clear picture before I can come up with a proposal. I don't want to stop somewhere in the conversation and talk about us. That defeats the whole purpose. So,
it's great point. And the other piece, like if you get to the meeting, remember, my intro is like, we're the seller. We're selling this. We got to be grabbing the steering wheel. We're the driver of this conversation. So if, people have different personalities. So you're sitting down in front of a high D, you may not even get a question out. They may just say, hey, tell me about your company and how you can help me, right? They may just like go into that and be like, well, was there something on our website or something that, spawned, you agreed to this meeting and I appreciate that. I would reset it and say, kind of like you said, hey, we'll get to talking about me. I really need to learn about you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, right? Or not even that. It's just like, hey, I saw on your LinkedIn page, flip the conversation back to asking them a question about them, get them to answering questions first. But they will sprinkle in throughout the conversation, hey, tell me about you. Tell me about you. They're going to want to know about you, and that's a good thing, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, you nailed it. You're in the driver's seat. That's so important to remember, especially when you're dealing with a very high personality. When we get into the buyer personas, and I know we have a whole on-demand course around that, especially when you're dealing with the high D and the disc profile, or whatever you want to call them, the dominant. You're right. They're terse, to the point, and they want to always be in control. But think about this. They're having challenges, right? They're facing something. This isn't the time for them to take the wheel while you're driving. You need to continue the conversation and keep steering down this path, because you're going to get there eventually. And that's one of the reasons why we have the guardrails and the discovery guide and the whole framework, is to help guide this conversation and lead them down this trail. And you're driving this thing. If you let them spot check you or spot you and jump around and start jerking the wheel, it's going to swerve all over the place. It's going to be discombobulated and frustrating, and it won't feel like a great experience for them or you. And that's the last thing we want, right? A professional takes control and guides them through because you're the pro. So,
Yeah, totally true. I want to flip back to what you said a little bit ago. Like, some great feedback earlier. You know, for example, cybersecurity is like a hot topic right now, right? A lot of our partners sell it, and they go down a road of talking about the products. And, that's fine. We're going to get to that point with value and differentiation. And the one thing you can't say is like, hey, we provide cybersecurity to protect your business, right? That's not articulating the value or the differentiation you were talking about, right? It's like more along the line like, look, we work with our partners to provide a comprehensive defense and in-depth cybersecurity program that's in alignment with this cybersecurity framework. Then articulate how we do it better, what's our proven process, how have we done this before with other companies in their industry, right? It's flowing, the story's starting to roll on that side. You're now starting to get to the point where now you are differentiating yourself on their side. What other kind of from a pitfall standpoint? What else happens during a conversation? Kind of like I said, we've been talking about like, not always perfect. We get off track. How's a good way for a partner to keep hold of that wheel?
Yeah, I would go back to the discovery guide. Remember we talked about the guardrails. I'm going to come back to this one because it keeps the conversation in alignment. And you, when you're going out and doing the selling, or having a conversation, you in the sales role, I should say, and you're looking for their issues, their challenges that they're facing, how you're going to solve them. It guides you through, and it's going to be a reminder that, look, I need to keep asking, and to where they have no more answers left. I'm going to exhaust it out. Tell me more. What about this? Describe this situation. How is this impacting you? Getting into that current state, and then eventually getting to the future of where they're trying to get to and the implications of that, and what does that look like to them? Have them describe that to you. It's important that you get it in their words. That's another one. Not your interpretation of it, but their exact words as close as possible, and use those in your proposal, right? Because you are basically delivering exactly what their needs are, what they said. You've established your expertise and authority. You're sharing stories. You're articulating your differentiating factors. It's all in the discovery guide. So as you use this last piece, it's going to be critical to stay focused on getting it filled out, asking questions. So when you later go back and do your proposal, it's all there. You're not having to think it through, because you're going to forget things. This isn't a quick, hey, I'm going to change out your mouse kind of stuff. This can be very elaborate and detailed. And so use the discovery guide. Use the discovery guide, keep the guardrails, keep the conversation flowing. That's how you stay in control and you're driving.
Man, great points. And when I got to the end of a conversation, like the Q&A side, like I'd even say, let me just check real quick. I had a bunch of questions prepared for you. I just want to make sure I asked them all. Yep, we look good. Or, oh, here's a question I forgot. Get to it. Again, you're not only just qualifying them for fit, you're differentiating yourself from the competitors. Like most, when you're going through RSF, there's a lot of questions that you're asking, but really it's from a standpoint, you're really understanding their business. They've been in their business for years. You have not. So really understanding those problems that they're having, both, the big urgent problems that are on the surface, that's why you're there, and these other latent problems. So final thoughts, responses, any other tips for our viewers?
I'd say, just to recap, remember, you're a professional. After you've gone through all of our training and you signed up for the live instructor course with Keith here, just remember that you got to implement this. You got to practice. You got to role play. Be a professional. Stay in control. Use the discovery guide as your framework, as your guideposts, as your guardrails to keep the conversation moving forward, get all the data, keep driving deep. Do not settle for surface answers. Go at least 2 to 3 levels deep and get it in their words, and then be prepared to write up your proposal and have fun.
Excellent. James, thanks again. Thanks for being here and enlightening the audience, and like I said, providing a wealth of knowledge. It's been a lot of fun working with you on this. I certainly look forward to a future podcast having you back.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate it. Yeah, I look forward to it too. Lots of fun.
Excellent. Good seeing you. Take care.
All right. Bye.
So in today's podcast, James talked about some really, really real world scenarios. Look, practice makes perfect. You would not compete in any event, sport, whatever, without practicing beforehand. Top-notch professional athletes still have a coach to this day. They still practice all the time to get better. You should be having a conversation, not reading off of a bunch of scripted questions and just going down and checking them out. Prepare, prepare, prepare. I'm an Eagle Scout. Be prepared is ingrained in my head. This helps you have deeper conversations to get to the root of the buyer's business. It also helps you differentiate yourself. Differentiate you from your competitors out there and give yourself a competitive edge. So this ends our series on result selling framework. Go to PAX 8 Academy. Take this course. It's free, on demand. Result selling framework. Or you can go and pay a nominal fee to take the 4-week instructor-led course that's around the same topic. Give yourself some more information. This is the practice part that we just talked about. Now, if you're ready to scale your business, like Keith, we got this down. Like, we need to get it to the next level. We offer peer groups as well as one-to-one coaching around sales, operations, finance, just to name a few. You're looking to grow, we're here to help. So let us know how we can help. Be on the lookout for more sales pitch podcasts around other sales topics coming soon. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.
Woohoo! I think it went well. That was fun. Oh yeah. Oh, we're still recording? No.